Well, welcome back. More evidence of influence peddling crimes from the first family. The Daily Mail obtaining an affidavit revealing that James Biden, the president's brother, was hired to broker a $140 million deal with Saudi Arabia and a U.S. construction company while Joe was a sitting vice president. James reportedly selected for the deal because Saudi Arabia, quote, would not dare stiff the brother of the VP, who would be instrumental to the deal. The New York Post covered this morning calling Jim his brother's reaper. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer says he will subpoena James Biden. Joining me now is Fox News radio host, Fox News contributor, and political editor for townhall.com, Guy Benson. Guy, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Good morning.
Your reaction.
Is anyone surprised at all? I mean, this is what the Biden family has been doing now for years. Self-enrichment based on the name. This is cronyism. Whether this particular case is criminal, I'd be surprised. We can debate the ethics of it, but it definitely stinks, I think, to the average person. And Maria, when I read this story, my first reaction upon conclusion was, has a single thing that Tony Bobulinski, remember him, has a single thing that he said been disproven at this stage? Because he's made some very serious allegations that go well beyond just sort of this self-dealing, Biden family enrichment. He has had a front row seat to all of this stuff, working closely, hand in glove with Hunter, with Jim, also with Joe Biden himself on a number of occasions, according to Bobulinski. And based on my following of this entire saga, nothing that he said hasn't panned out yet. I think that is really fertile ground for the House Oversight Committee and other people investigating this family.
Yeah, I mean, look, Senator Ron Johnson said it's tens of millions of dollars that the Biden family has taken in from Chinese officials tied to the Chinese Communist Party. And when this starts to become dangerous is the place where we are today, where we have communist China sending spy balloons, spy flights across the world into America, breaching our sovereignty, and snapping images of our nuclear installations. I mean, is it any surprise that Joe Biden hasn't asked China for more information and questions and held the Communist Party to account? No, he's not doing anything about it. So this is when it really becomes dangerous, understanding the influence peddling that has gone on and understanding the fact that this is the man who has to make decisions which are supposed to be for America against Communist China. How can he?
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions that's been floating out there now for quite some time is Joe Biden, the president? It's not about Hunter and his, personal foibles or the brother. It's about the president. Is he compromised in some way? I have no idea if he is or if he's not. What I do know is that when our colleague Peter Doocy asked him about these business deals and his knowledge of these overseas business deals, particularly with Hunter, back on the campaign trail, Biden said he had no knowledge of any of it, which is just not true and extremely untrue based on, again, Tony Bobulinski's testimony that he's put forward. That was a lie, for lack of a better term. So the question then becomes, what else is he not being truthful about? I know everyone on the left wants to make this whole story about a weird right-wing obsession with the drug habits or the sexual proclivities of the president's son. That is not what this is about. It's about something much bigger. It could ensnare the president in a number of ways, and I think we all deserve answers to that, and everyone should want answers to those types of questions.
And by the way, it's not just the Bobulinski testimony, right? We just looked at the email on screen. Let's show that email again, 10% for the big guy. James, this is the beginning of a negotiation between the Biden team and CEFC, the energy company controlled by the Communist Party, where they write specifically everybody who gets what? 20% held by H, probably Hunter, 20% held by RW, 20% held by JG, 20% held by TB, Tony Bobulinski, 10% held by Jim, that's the brother, and 10 held by H for the big guy, James.
Yeah, and eventually, I believe the figure was 4.8 million that went from CEFC to Biden-related entities. And Guy, this is kind of the most amazing part of this, just the fact that they haven't even felt the need to explain. There was never obviously an explanation of how Hunter was really an expert in Chinese finance. No, he's really an expert in Ukrainian natural gas. At least the Clintons, they at least pretended that they were doing charity ventures. Here, there's not even an effort by the Biden family to attempt to describe this as anything other than what it appears to be. But are we now going to get James Biden telling us that he has deep knowledge of Saudi real estate?
I think that we are unlikely to get answers from this family because they feel arrogantly and probably correctly like they don't need to because the media doesn't care. They can just announce it's Russian disinformation and almost everyone goes with that for a period of time to protect the family for political reasons. Where the Bidens might start to get worried is if there's a groundswell of support to replace Joe Biden at the top of the Democratic Party, at which point the protection racket goes away, at which point the questions might come in a serious way from people other than Republicans and conservatives. But to me, it just all feels extremely political, and it's hard to reach another conclusion. Maybe that's too cynical, but I don't think so.
But it's also a head scratcher as far as why the mainstream media will not cover this story. Do they want to cover up for Joe Biden that much that they ignore the fact that the World Health Organization says now that it will no longer continue its investigation into the origins of COVID, blaming China for not collaborating with them? Oh, okay, so China won't allow anybody into Wuhan. Okay, so forget it. House Republicans ramping up their own investigations. They sent letters to Anthony Fauci, Francis Collins, Peter Daszak for information, Guy. But can you imagine that it has been 2 years that Joe Biden has been in the White House and the Democrats have been in charge, and we have not had one hearing on the origins of COVID-19?
I mean, it's extraordinary. This is a virus that has killed millions of people around the world. It uprooted our society for well over a year. This affected every country in the world, and we still don't have a definitive answer on where the virus came from. And the reason we don't have that answer is because the Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese government would not allow that answer to be discovered and thoroughly investigated by an impartial third party, which, by the way, the WHO is not. They've been in the pocket of China. Their leader was handpicked by China. They spread actual disinformation from China in the early days of the pandemic. But no one was really allowed to do an uninhibited investigation into what happened. So, I mean, the working theory that was labeled wrongly misinformation was that this thing may have been created in a lab and then accidentally leaked out. I have used that as my working theory of exactly what happened for quite a while, not because there is hardcore evidence, although there's no evidence of the natural origin theory either, but because the Chinese government's doing what they're doing. Why would they be covering this up so aggressively if this were sort of a fairly anodyne, non-damning reason? I think that we can reach a very reasonable conclusion based on their conduct. And then to your question, Maria, is there accountability coming for them in any way from anyone? Because it seems like the world's kind of moving on from COVID. I get why, but how it started, who covered it up, who's responsible, that stuff ought to matter a lot, given just the body count alone.
Yeah, and for that, I go back to this story, and that is the compromising position that Joe Biden is in after he and his family took all of that money. So Xi Jinping says, no investigation in Wuhan. Oh, okay, I won't bring it up in the 5 times I meet with Xi Jinping then. I don't have any evidence that he's actually even brought up this subject to Xi Jinping in the 5 times that they've met. Guy, thanks very much for weighing in on all of that. We so appreciate you, and we'll be listening and watching.